All right, we are live. Hello, welcome to Divorce Happy Half Hour. My name is John Knocklinger. I'm one of the co-owners of Netsquire, and I am your wonderful host for today. It is Friday at 12:30 Eastern, which means it's time for our weekly edition of this great podcast. My co-host, Christina Previtt, is taking a well-deserved vacation today, so you just get me. I'm very sorry about that for anyone who's disappointed not to see Christina on the screen. So today we're going to talk about a topic that's sort of the opposite of what we normally talk about, which is we're going to talk about the court system. And the reason we're going to talk about the court system is that for you to understand why engaging in a flat fee divorce is more preferable to the court system, you need to understand what that looks like, what that court system looks like. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and sort of what's currently going on so that you understand that it is a binary choice. You have a choice to either go towards the court system and deal with that, or you have an opportunity to try to resolve your divorce quickly, inexpensively, amicably, quickly, all of those wonderful words that I'm sure all of you really want to hear. So again, Netsquire is a business that is devoted to helping people get divorced without fighting. What we do is we provide flat fee divorce packages where either we will help you and your spouse develop an agreement through the process called mediation. And mediation we've discussed on prior podcasts. I'm sure we'll discuss it more and more. But basically, at its core, mediation is where a neutral person, like myself, who's also an attorney, will help you and your spouse reach an agreement on all of the issues that you need to agree upon in order to move forward. And then once you reach an agreement, that verbal agreement is put into a written document that ultimately the two of you will sign, and then you'll get divorced. Or you'll go through a package that we call our settlement package, which is where you and your spouse have already agreed to everything. You know what you want, you know what your agreement is, but you really just need somebody to put it into proper form. You need someone to put it into the proper legal document, and then you need help getting divorced. So Netsquire provides those services, which are not traditional divorce attorney services, because traditional divorce attorney services are where each spouse goes and hires an attorney, usually for $5,000. And then the attorneys either take you through a process where they try to resolve it or they go right to court. So what we do is it's one price that both of you can share, or one person pays, but it's less than what each of you would pay to an attorney. So that's the whole point of Netsquire. But let's talk about a little bit about the court system and sort of what that other path looks like. So right now in New Jersey, we're having a substantial judicial crisis. And what that means is there are a very large number of vacancies across our state. And because there's vacancies, that means that judges do not have the time to deal with all of the cases that are being filed. Now, when you go through a divorce in New Jersey, you're going to be going to our family part. Okay, it's a family court. And family court handles a bunch of things. And some counties only have one or two judges that are doing this. Some counties do have a full complement of judges. But at the end of the day, they're all doing a variety of different things in the family part. So what I mean by that is it's not just divorce. Okay, that's one part of what judges handle. They also handle issues for people that have children in common that were never married. So they deal with custody and child support issues. They're dealing with people that were already divorced and now they have additional issues that need to be resolved. They're dealing with people that have domestic violence cases. They're dealing with adoptions. They're dealing with child abuse and neglect cases. They're dealing with a whole bunch of things. And divorce is just one of the types of cases that's being dealt with. And to be perfectly honest, compared to a child abuse and neglect case, a divorce case isn't terribly important. So divorce cases are very frequently put on the back burner in terms of importance. So it's not uncommon to see someone who there's no settlement. They can't resolve their case. It's not uncommon to see divorces last for a very lengthy period of time. And to sort of illustrate this for everyone listening, I went and got some stats about what's currently going on in New Jersey, so you can see in reality what going into the court system means for you. So these stats are from July 2022 through January 2023. So the most recent 6 months that we have stats for. So the number of divorces that were filed in New Jersey were 15,329. So 15,329 new divorce filings occurred in New Jersey during that 6-month period, which, by the way, is less than the prior 6-month period. So the number of divorces being filed is a little bit less. But here's the important thing for all of you to understand, that during at the end of those 6 months, 4,071 divorce cases were backlogged. And what we mean by backlogged is that they had been going on for more than a year. So that means there were over 4,000 people whose divorces had been going for more than a year. And some of them may have been going substantially longer. I just don't have that information. But the total number of pending divorce cases, in other words, the number of cases that are being handled by judges that are divorced, they're not all those other kinds of cases that I just talked about, at the end of that 6-month period was 19,838. So there were almost 20,000 divorces currently being handled by the judges across New Jersey. And you might think, well, there must be a ton of judges. Well, there are a lot of judges, but guess what? Judges have to handle criminal cases and civil cases, and they have to do estate cases. They have to do all these other cases. And then, of course, there's appeals judges. What I'm trying to get at here is that this is a lot of cases for not a lot of judges. And now we have vacancies, and it's a substantial problem right now in New Jersey. We have a ton of judicial vacancies. And because of that, there's even fewer judges available to deal with divorce cases. So what does that mean for you? That, while you're starting a divorce case, it means that if you do not settle your case, if you cannot figure out a way to get it resolved between you and your spouse quickly, and you just enter the court system thinking, the court, the judge is going to make us settle. The judge is going to do this. The judge is going to do that. Not so fast, because right now in New Jersey, judges just don't have the time. Now, we have a lot of great judges, but they just don't have the time to deal with divorce cases. And so basically, everyone's being forced into mediation and other ways to try to resolve their divorce. So if you know that really what's going to happen is you're going to hire your attorneys, spend $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 just to get to a point where a judge tells you, I don't have time for you guys because I have a million other things I have to deal with. I'm going to send you guys to a mediator. Why not just do that at the very beginning? And that's our philosophy, that most cases, and by most I mean 90% of you listening, really could start with mediation. You could just go meet with somebody, talk about your issues, and reach an agreement. Sure, there's all kinds of issues that might come up. There's unique issues. There's issues where you might need an attorney to give you some guidance, but those are the minority, the very, very small minority of cases. Most people getting divorced have simple situations. And what I mean by simple, you've got a couple children. You might own a house. You might have some retirement accounts. You might have 2 cars. And maybe you each have a W-2 job. Maybe you make about the same. Maybe someone makes a lot more than the other. But those are simple, relatively simple cases. And so you don't need to spend all of that money going through a prolonged legal process, because most attorneys, have to do certain things because that's their job. And those certain things include engaging what we call discovery. Discovery is just the process where you ask a bunch of questions to your spouse. What bank accounts do you have? What retirement accounts do you have? Guess what? The vast majority of you already know that information. You already know that information. A lot of you, during your marriages, you both saw everything. You saw retirement accounts, you saw pay stubs, you filed joint tax returns, everything. And because of that, you don't always need to go through this long, prolonged process to ask for information that you already know. So, because of that, most of you are in a situation where you don't have to enter this court system that has these horrible statistics that are just getting worse and worse. I mean, and there's certain counties where, like, for example, if you're in Morris, Hudson, Sussex, or Somerset County, oh, forget it. Your case is going to drag and drag and drag. Those cases are horrible. We've got certain counties where they have suspended all divorce trials. And what does that mean? That means if you don't resolve it, you're just going to be sitting and sitting and sitting and waiting. Well, why would you do that? Now, most people aren't able to resolve their divorce the longer they're in the system because emotion has taken over. I always like to say that before you enter the court system is the best time to resolve everything, because it's not John versus Jane or Jane versus John. It's just Jane and John trying to resolve their issues. It's not adversarial. You don't have attorneys writing nasty letters to each other. You don't have all these required things that the court's going to require you to do. You can, sit there and sort of just talk things out on your own schedule too, by the way. Because when you enter the court system, what happens? You have to be there when the judge tells you have to be there. So, at the end of the day, you really benefit from mediation or just you and your spouse working things out on a whole bunch of different levels. I've been involved with divorces that have gone on for 4 years, 5 years. I remember a divorce case in particular that was a trial where we started when the kid that was an only child was a freshman in high school, and when we got them divorced after the judge made a decision after a trial, the kid was in the second year of college. So there are reasons why you don't want to go down that road, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. By the way, once you enter the court system, what happens? You sort of get caught up in this vortex that really takes over your life. And it's only after you've spent way too much money with your attorneys that sometimes the light bulb hits you and you're like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And we've seen that. We've seen it over and over again. Christina and I have both been doing this for almost 20 years. We've seen thousands and thousands of divorce cases. And the vast majority of them should have and could have been resolved day one. If someone had just sat down with two people and tried to reach an agreement before they spent all this money on attorneys. I mean, I can't even tell you how much people spend on attorneys. I mean, we've had fees that were insane. But you know what? It doesn't help. And what we like to say is that families just need a problem solver. Families just need someone to help solve their problem. People don't need to fight. I hear these phrases all the time about, I need a shark or I need a bulldog or whatever. You know what? I freaking hate those phrases. They are BS, because all you're paying for is someone to fight your battle. You're just paying for somebody to try to punish your spouse because you're upset. Do you want to spend all that money? Or would you rather take that money and go on vacation, buy a new house, pay for college for your kids, whatever? You need to be realistic about the fact that you're not just fighting for the sake of fighting. You can reach an agreement right off the bat. And if you don't, you're going to enter the court system where, as we pointed out here, over 20% of the cases are lasting more than a year. Now, sure, could you get it done quicker? Sure. But you know what? In this 80% that are not backlogged, in other words, 80% that are being resolved within a year, a lot of those are uncontested cases where people are doing exactly what we're advocating and resolving their divorce, then filing, and then getting divorced very quickly. But once you enter the court system and you're entering the court system contested, and contested just means here's a complaint. A complaint is what we call the document you file with the court that initiates everything. Here's a complaint, your spouse responds, and we're off to the races. At that point, anything's possible. because, again, there's not enough judges to help push the case along. So you really are at the mercy of everything. And, when nothing's happening, when there's a long period of time where the court's not requiring you to come in, where no one's really requiring you to do anything, you might just sit and do nothing because no one has an incentive to do anything because you've already spent a bunch of money. You're already in the court system. But what I kind of always find it interesting that people don't settle because they want to tell their story and they want to tell it to a judge. Well, I just told you, judges don't have time for divorces. So what do you think a judge thinks whenever you bring a case to them and all you want to do is tell them a story that isn't relevant? And what do I mean by not relevant? Well, divorce in New Jersey is no fault. Okay. There are very limited exceptions where fault would ever come into play. And they're so limited that they don't apply to 99.99% of cases. But we're talking about you people that want to tell their story. And if the judge just hears what an ass my, husband is, they're going to see my way and I'm going to get all of this stuff. Not how it works. Not how it works. We're in a no fault state, which means it doesn't matter why you're getting divorced. It doesn't matter that your wife cheated on you. Doesn't matter. And by prolonging things and punishing them by, hiring a shark attorney and going after them and trying to get this and trying to get that, all you're hurting is yourself. That's all you're doing. You're hurting yourself and your own wallet. That's all you're hurting. You're not going to hurt them because if you ever get to a trial, notice how I said if you ever get to a trial, because like I said, trials are being suspended all over the state. All a judge is going to do is look at the facts, the financial facts. They're going to look and see how much money each of you have. They're not going to, and how many assets each of you have and how much debt. When it comes to your kids, they're going to look at what's in the best interest of your kids. They're not going to pay any attention to the fact that, your husband had an affair with the next door neighbor. Okay, so he had an affair with the next door neighbor. Does that make him any less of a good parent? Like, people just get too caught up on their emotions, and so they want to fight. Their instinct is to fight. And I feel like our society these days is all about fighting. Fighting words, calling people names, doing all this nonsense. We've had all kinds of issues over the years. It's actually bled all the way up to our highest offices in our country where people are so interested in putting people down and fighting. Don't let that happen in your divorce. Because in your divorce, you're the one that pays for it. You pay for it. Nobody else. You pay for it. You pay an attorney. You pay with using your PTO days. You pay with time away from doing the things you want to do. You pay with not being able to take vacations. You pay with using up your precious savings that you could use for other things. You use all of those things up to fight for things that you could have just resolved at the very beginning of your case. And what I really hope that anyone listening to this understands is that you have a choice. Everyone has a choice. You have a choice to either go down the road of trying to resolve everything with your spouse at the very beginning, or going down the road of paying attorneys a lot of money to engage in a long process that's going to get you where you could have gotten it at the very beginning if you had just chosen to be reasonable. And this is not an opinion. These are facts. These are facts. For a long time, when I initially met with somebody who wanted to go down the process, in my notes, I would put what I think the settlement should be, like reasonable settlement. And 9 times out of 10, the final agreement after a year or 2 years was, guess what? Within the range of what I thought it should be at the very beginning. Because divorce is not rocket science. It's not. I don't know who thinks it is. It's not rocket science. Divorce is 95% emotion. And if you enter the court system, it becomes 100% emotion, maybe 99% emotion. And I'm not suggesting there are not sometimes unique legal issues that have to be discussed. I'm also not telling you that there's not situations that cannot be resolved through early intervention, through mediation, because there are unique situations everywhere. If someone wants to move with the children out of New Jersey and they want to move to California, how do you split that baby? Not literally, of course, but how do you resolve that? Those are difficult questions that sometimes require somebody to make a call. How do you resolve situations where someone had a bunch of money before they got married and now they're getting divorced, but maybe during the marriage it wasn't as cut and dry, as the account was never touched, or the account that they had before they got married didn't have any money put into it. There are situations where there are interesting legal issues, but most of you, that's not the case. Most of you don't own companies. Most of you have W-2 jobs. Most of you have healthy kids where you and your spouse, really, you guys are on the same page that you really want to share your kids in a reasonable way that makes sense for them and for you. So most of you don't need to go down that road. And if you choose to go down that road, you're doing it for emotional reasons, not for real reasons. And I'm being serious, real reasons. And so what's interesting to me is, if you are listening to this and you make the conscious decision, and I recognize that you and your spouse both have to agree to go down a process. But if you guys go down a process where it involves each of you paying $25,000 or $30,000 to an attorney, guess what? That's your fault. That is your fault. So don't get all upset with your attorney. Don't get all mad that they're asking you for more money. Don't get upset that it's, you've drained all of your assets, or you're having to ask parents or friends for more money. You have the decision at the very beginning about which path you want to go down. It's your decision. It is your decision, nobody else's. So you can decide to enter this horrible court system that all it really does is forces you to resolve things through financial coercion. And what I mean by financial coercion is it really emphasizes, if you don't want to settle, you're going to pay your attorney a lot of money just to keep doing things. So you either do that, or, and attorneys aren't bad. I am an attorney. I'm not telling you attorneys are bad. Or you can keep the attorneys out of it for the most part. Go to a mediator. Like us. Go to a mediator and let a mediator help you and your spouse identify issues, help you resolve your issues. And if it comes to play that there's an issue that is, requires some legal advice, well, then you can go speak to an attorney and understand maybe how you should resolve it as part of the mediation process. But that doesn't mean you have to just start, loading your missiles to start firing at each other. Why? Why would we do that? And then what happens, guys? If your case drags on and on and on and you're living together, oh my God. So you're living with somebody, you're going through a divorce, and it gets worse and worse in the house. And that opens you up to so many other issues, which I'm not going to talk about today. But that could open you up to so many other issues. So again, you have a choice. All right. And I'm a big fan of you taking personal responsibility for your own life. Don't blame other people. Certainly don't blame your attorney, because it's not your attorney that made the decision about which road to go down. Now, granted, you may have gone to attorneys that did not give you these options, but if you're listening to this podcast, guess what? You can't say that, because I've just told you what your options are, whether or not your attorney tells you or not. I mean, there's a lot of attorneys out there that probably think this kind of approach to the divorce is inappropriate. I don't really care what they think, because we have done it for so long and have had so much success. We know that this works. We know that it saves people money. We know that it makes families heal faster by engaging in a non-litigated, non-contested, non-fighting divorce process. You can do it. I promise you can do it. And if you think that you and your spouse are good candidates, or you think that you might be able to do mediation, or maybe you and your spouse just need a checklist of what you need to resolve and you think you can do that, contact us. Let's have a conversation to see if it's something that you and your spouse can do to save a lot of money. And you will save a lot of money. I mean, what's there not to like about it? The whole process costing what it would cost one of you to hire an attorney just to get started. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer. And I really hope that you understand that you do have a choice. You have a choice. Take personal responsibility. Don't get all upset with your attorney whenever you're spending all this money on your attorney later on, because you are deciding how you want to start your divorce at the very beginning. And if you listen to this today, you don't have any excuses. All right, that's it for today. We keep these to under 30 minutes because we know everyone has busy, busy lives. We'll be right back here next Friday, 12:30 Eastern, for another great conversation. Take care.